person in a slightly posterior pelvic tilt, which is the opposite direction where they're going to tend to go. Okay, so for the latissimus dorsi, excuse me, normally we will do it both arms at the same time, and so what I'm going to have you do is, so what does the latissimus dorsi do? Did you guys?
Internal rotation, extension, adduction.
Extension, adduction, and a little bit of rotation.
Some
right?
coughing.
So if we're gonna what?
Some coughing.
Like coffee. So if we're going to measure the length of the lats, what are the directions we're going to want to go? Flexion, external rotation,
AB.
and abduction. Okay, so we're going to use gravity for this one. So after I just emphatically said that all muscle length tests are passive, this is one that you typically just ask them to do and let them hang there. Okay, so what I'm going to have you do is just go ahead and bring your arms up overhead and just let them keep going. Yeah. She's a little bit up here. So I'm going to have you come, just bring your arms here. I'm going to have you push your back into my hand. There you go. Oh, you don't
Sorry,
like
I
it.
maybe should stand.
Ah, okay, go ahead and come back down. So she's not cheating, she just is hyperlordotic. So how you would measure this one is you're going to be measuring the distance between the arm and the table, okay? So typically, we haven't covered the landmarks of the elbow, but you've got a medial and lateral epicondyle of your humerus, and so for a lot of these, you're going to be measuring from the lateral epicondyle to the table. Okay, so you palpate, it's going to be there, and you're measuring this distance.
Why do you want them posteriorly tilted?
Because what is the attachment for the lat?
Oh, on the iliac crest.
Yeah, and so if you let them go into hyperlordosis, you're shortening the muscle here, which will give you more range of motion here.
Okay.
So just like we talked about two joint muscles, you're actually wanting to get that maximally lengthened here and then measure the motion up there, okay? So with your tape measure, everything's going to be in centimeters and not in inches, okay? So then we're gonna come in. So what I do is I find my structure, I put my thumb on the 0, and then I bring my index finger down, okay, like this, so I get that distance. Then I can pull it out and read it, if I had my glasses on. So it's 2.6 centimeters.
And are you cool with her wrist and forearm sitting on the table for this measurement?
Yeah, because if it was the table that was the problem, she could have her arms straighter. So she's resting there, and so that's okay. So again, the lats don't cross the elbow, so I don't really care what the elbow does.
Oh, I meant more in terms of just like
If she had more available
she's, like,
range.
running into something.
If she had more range, she would be able to straighten out and get further. So I don't think that's what's limiting her. Okay? Does everyone understand Dr. Bryant's question? If you thought it was soft tissue that was limiting, you could actually move her up, okay, so that her forearms were coming off the table. Because what you need to know is this distance, not a distance down here. Okay? All right. You can come on back down. Sorry, I left you up there for quite a while. I think we go into the pecs. Yeah. Okay. So yes, Jess.
So for the shoulder skills, it asks for norms for muscle length testing.
Right.
So what are we looking for?
So
that?
0.
0.
Yeah. Thank you for saying that. Okay, so now the next one is for the general pec, you just have the person put their hands behind their head. Let's go ahead and just put your hands behind the head. And you're looking at the distance of the olecranon to the table. Now this gets to be a little bit tricky because there's no more room for her to go, right? She's down on the table even though her olecranon is not touched. So the tip of the olecranon is not touching the table, that would be a distance. But that distance, there's soft tissue there. There's no way the olecranon could truly touch the table. And so in that situation, I would just put negative, meaning that she doesn't have a length issue. Because it's not really 0, but to measure that, it wouldn't make sense, okay? If she had tight pecs, her arm would be like this, okay? So then we would measure that distance. And you're just going perpendicular to the table, okay? Now so that's general. Now for clavicular, what is the orientation of the fibers? Hayden, I feel like, come join us. How about right here? Put my back to it, I don't like it. So clavicular fibers of the pec, they're pretty horizontal. So if we want to maximally lengthen those fibers, what position do we want the arm to be in? Yeah, so we're going to go right out at 90 degrees. You can go ahead and relax that arm. Straighten out your elbow. So we're going to come and just go straight out. We're going to measure that. I'm gonna bend her elbow because it's freaky to watch that. So again, we're measuring lateral epicondyle to the table. And she obviously has no length issues. Okay? So this is going to be the clavicular portion of the pec major. Now, if we come up, we're going to go to 135. Okay? Now, 135 is just a 45-degree angle off of 90, right? So we're going to go to 145 and have her straighten out her arm. That's going to be what part of the pec major? The sternal. Okay? It's the same measure, lateral epicondyle to the table. Again, if soft tissue is what's limiting it, you would just put negative in parentheses. Okay? So we have pec major general. We have pec major clavicular, pec major sternal. Okay? And then we had lats. So we've covered 4, but they're all pretty easy, right? Okay. So the next one is pec minor. Pec minor, you just have the person lay on the table. Okay? Arms are flat. They're just laying there. You're going to measure posterior acromion to the table. So here, she has a little bit of tightness. Okay? And how I know that is I could push her down further, so I know that it's her pec that's tight. Okay?
Should you always test that, like give it a little push?
Yeah.
Okay.
Because for some of the others of you, you may be in that position, but it's because there's soft tissue that's limiting you going back. So you need to know that it's not that, and that it's truly that it's anterior tightness. Okay? So again, you're going to find that acromion, and then you're going to measure that distance perpendicular to the table. Okay? So I'm going to show you one more. Then what's after that? Is it biceps, triceps? Can you go one more? Yeah. And then one more? And is that it? Yeah. Okay. So we've almost done all the muscle length tests. Okay? So we talked yesterday in anatomy class that we were going to talk about the differential for the 3 muscles that attach to the coracoid process. Right? So when we're in this position, it could be all 3 muscles that are contributing to that protracted position. Okay? So if we want to rule out biceps is a 2-joint muscle, okay, and we have our arms straight on the table, what could we do to put slack in the biceps? Flex the elbow. So what we're going to do is flex the elbow and see if this goes down. And I don't think it did. Did anyone see? Because Amy is a little bit tight. It didn't go down at all. So biceps are not contributing to her length issue in the front of her shoulder. Okay? The next muscle we're going to rule out is the coracobrachialis. Right? So if we wanted to shorten the coracobrachialis, what does the coracobrachialis do? It adducts and flexes. Okay? So if we wanted to shorten it, we're going to do those actions, but we're doing it passively, right? So I'm going to flex her shoulder just a little bit and bring it in a little bit, but you don't want to come up any higher than this. Because if I bring her up really far, what happens to their posterior acromion? I'm driving it into the table and it has nothing to do with length. So it's really important when you're doing the differential that you're really only pulling it a few inches off the table. Okay? Now, I don't think that it moved there either. Okay? So if it did change, then I would want to take that measurement. Okay? If it was still not 0, or if I still felt like it wasn't soft tissue, the remaining tightness would have to be because of the pec minor, because I've shortened the other 2 muscles that attach. Okay?
And on that note about maybe a little, sometimes it is easier to just feel on the anterior shoulder for changes in pressure
Yeah.
pushing up into your hand than it is to visually see the difference.
Yeah, and I wouldn't be looking, I was only asking you all to look, but I would be palpating for a change in that tension. And if there is a change, then I would want to measure that.
You mean changing the tension for the muscles that you just shortened?
So I would have my hand here. Go ahead and relax. I'm gonna stretch them away. So I would flexor. Nothing changed because there's
Oh.
tension that's holding her up, right? And then once I have her here, I'm still feeling, and now I'm gonna flex her and adductor a little bit, and I'm still feeling no change. There is a little bit of change, and if there were, then I would want to measure that. Okay, because then the remaining of that would be pec minor. So in my example, in the documentation notes that I now dictated like 27,000 times, there's actually an example of documenting this particular test. And it goes from 5.6 to 3.1. So that person still has some tightness left in the pec minor. Okay? So does everyone understand pec minor and the differential? Okay. Why don't we have you go do that?